Welcome to Marked Close One, where we talk about how sales and marketing work together. We skip the theory and business school buzzwords to give you practical strategies you can use today to fill your pipeline and close deals faster. Let's get to it.
Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning in to another episode here of Mark Close One. We're going into still in part of the series where I think this is episode 6 now, if I remember right, Mark.
5 or 6,
But
I don't know.
this is in regards to the series of where it's marketing that makes real money. And what I wanted to do, and we're just going to have a conversation in regards to actual follow-up. I think that is one of the biggest things that happens sales related wise, of where leads just kind of go to die. Even if you're putting in all these additional efforts to be able to generate leads, if you got your sales team that's all kind of squared away and ready to go, I think follow up in regards to these leads is probably the first place of where things can fall off and just it can go haywire very quickly. Would you agree with that one, Mark?
Yeah, I would agree with that one, both for, the companies that I've run and for my clients. Yeah, I've seen a poor follow-up process be the very thing that makes it so those leads just die.
Well, let's do this one. Let me throw this first question to you. We've already won the lead. Okay. So we've already gotten your part. Your team has done the service that they need to from there. Well, from your perspective, why would a prospect go dark after they've already shown interest?
Well, it's a good question, John. I think there's a few reasons that a prospect can go dark. I think the first reason seems to be a combination of timing and budget, and that's pretty common. And so what a lot of people do is they'll say yes initially, they'll take a call, they'll even receive a proposal, and then realize that either it's the wrong time of the fiscal year, and so they have to wait. If they have to wait 6 months for the fiscal year to come around, and you're not communicating with them that whole 6 months, when that 6 months does come around, you're likely not to get the job. And then they're likely to go dark, and you don't really realize that they've gone dark for just a internal budgeting reason. Sometimes it's just not what they expected financially, and that they have this idea that since they kind of have an idea how to do it, that therefore we should do it at a professional level much more cheaply than we're really able to do that.
Right.
Or they fall prey to a black hat type of offer on the internet. I see that a lot, that somebody will make an offer that is just really too good to be true. And of course, if you dig into it, you realize it is way too good to be true. But they don't know that on the surface. They're expecting, something that costs $800 a month should cost $99 a month because they saw that on the internet. And always there's just more questions need to be asked when you're talking about people that are trained professionals, how to get something done. How much should that actually cost, and how long should that really take, and what are you going to do if you get it, if it's done poorly? I mean, yeah. And then sometimes it is just, you didn't build trust. There wasn't a connection. You didn't click with that client. They, for whatever reason, decided they would go with somebody else who was able to speak their language more clearly. So there's just a number of reasons. Yeah.
Let me throw this one back at you. I mean, from a sales process, this is kind of an old school of hit and band. So you've got your budget, your authority, you've got to confirm that there's a need, and then you've got to be able to understand the timing of when this prospect would need, said product or service. But it sounds like it also hits from kind of a marketing perspective as well. But it makes me wonder if it's at least slightly different, of where if there was something that they weren't aware of your product, let's just see if it was able for a particular feature set or something like that, you were able to scratch the itch for whatever it is that they were trying to learn or be able to understand that a service was able to do. But then once they kind of scratch that, they go dark. Is that something that you think that you kind of experience as well? Is that might not have directly been a need, but there might have been just something that they simply wondered about it?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes people are just curious. I think it happens more often than not in the area of like something they could outsource to somebody else. We're not sure if they want the budget line item this year to actually outsource that thing, or whatever, that's a service coming in, or it's an improvement to their business. I mean, it could be a lot of different things. So they're just kind of out there kicking the tires, as it's often said. Hey, is this really something that we want to do? Or but there is also something we said just for timing, right? I wrote an email this morning, and it was a email campaign because when this thing's released, we're here in May right now. It's when we're recording this, and May is when report cards come out. So I have a tutoring company. I was writing some email copy for this morning. And the truth is, just what's timely right now is grades are going to come out, and some parents are going to be really excited about the grades their kids bring home, and other parents are not going to be excited about their kids. Their grades are good. And then this tutoring company is asking, all right, are the grades a proper reflection of your child's ability, or is that not reflecting well, and maybe do they need some help through the summer to get them caught up to speed? Well, that's a good timely email, right? But that same email may not hit the same way in September.
Right. Just came from a award ceremony as well for my youngest daughter, and it's you're right. It's one of those of where they were showing in the improvement. It was a benefit. It was a celebratory thing because the end of the year is there, but they're able to really acknowledge that. But for some reason, with the way that you answered that, I have a follow up for you on that one, Mark.
Okay.
So if you had a lead that came in, they kind of went dark. So let's assume a whatever the issue or whatever the thing that they were wanting to look at, that particular scratch was itched. What's the difference between lead nurturing? Because if they were literally looking something up, that probably is still a potential deal that you could continue to market to. But when would the difference be from a lead nurturing versus like sales follow-up that you would consider? What makes that difference there?
Well, that's a good question. And I think initially is asking the question, are they opening the emails? Because I think that lead nurturing usually comes first and foremost through email, comes secondarily through social media, maybe in a tertiary way through an occasional mail or going out to somebody. That's usually how leads are followed up on in kind of a nurture sequence, right? We don't want to bombard people. I listened to a report about a company they were a predatory lending company that is kind of in some trouble right now. And when they had a lead, they would call sometimes 9 or 10 times a day, with this predatory lending. I think that's a little bit, it starts getting not only annoying, but even crossing over to unethical when you start badgering somebody that much. And of course, the nature of the company was a bit unethical to begin with. However, when I program a nurture sequence internally for us, now not everybody does this, but I have it notify me if somebody has opened up one of my emails. And because if they open up an email, I know, okay, they just raised their hand and they said, okay, now I am going from just seeing these things come through my feed, and something about that actually triggered their interest. And then internally in my system, it goes right into a pipeline. As soon as they open up an email, it goes into a pipeline. And then I'll go in, and as I have time, I'll start going through those things that are in my pipeline and seeing what customers are actually a good fit for us. And then seeing, okay, how else can I reach out to this client? I'll start running reports so I know exactly what their pain points are. And so I can start addressing those pain points, and I'll start following them on socials, and I'll be a little bit more present in their life because I know that they just raised their hands. And now they've gone from just a drip nurturing sequence to saying, okay, there was something that I was interested in enough to where I read an email. That's the difference for me.
Well, it's kind of interesting that you and I look at that differently somewhat. I would, and I think it's really just more than anything kind of the perspective that you and I are kind of looking through on this.
For sure.
Let's going back to band just because that's simple. It's something that all salespeople are aware of. If there is maybe one of those 4 letters missing, that was one of those that I would consider have my guys continuously follow up on. Timing is a perfect one. If it's one of those of where they know that they really need it, they've got the authority to be able to make that decision, there's budget allocated for it, but they're just having to wait, then there's really no reason for that to go back to marketing. That should be something that stays in that sales funnel and should be one of those things that account executive continuously follows up on. But if it's one of those of where they're maybe missing 2, again, let's just say that it's let's say budget and timing. In that particular instance, it's probably not as worth it for the salesperson to be directly spending time on it. And it might be easier or might be better for it to go into more of an automated marketing like sequence, just so they can try to keep that lead at least semi-warm as we're trying to get closer to whatever that particular time frame. But I mean, that's at least away from a sales perspective that I've always looked at it. But I kind of like the way that you said it, where it's you're judging basing off of how often that they raise their hand.
Yeah, and that's an interesting differentiator, actually, because we're not really saying something different, I don't think.
Right.
Like, I met with a client on Friday that I'm not sure if they're going to raise their hand for this product in June or July, or if I'm talking more like October. Depends on where the bid comes in. But if they say, you know what, I got to wait for a new fiscal year, but that's for October for them, then I know I'm not going to badger them. I've already made my offer. But to your point, yeah, what I'll do is put them into a drip sequence. I want to keep in front of them all the time. And then when a time comes, sometime in the middle of September, then it's time to pick up the phone again or get on an email again and say, hey, just wanted to follow up on the thing we offered you several months ago. Are you ready to move forward on that? Help me get my ducks in a row. And so I think it's a combination of, you put them back into the marketing sequence, but also put some appointments on your calendar, to say, okay, it's time to follow up with this person at these particular strategic dates, because now we know something about the timing of their budgetary decisions. So I think it's kind of both and, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And then let me throw this one at you as well. As like, how do you build content that makes follow-up easier from the sales perspective? Do you ever look at it from that way, or like how you might be able to assist the account executive from a...
I think that gets back to, I had this issue this morning. I'm going to get back to this tutoring company. This tutoring company, they had put together an email, and when I looked at it, I said, okay, I'm not sure if from this email, if you want me to read your article, if you want me to listen to your podcast, or you want me to schedule an assessment. I'm not sure which one you want. Which one of those things do you actually want? And they said, well, an assessment, that's where we make all our money, is assessments. Okay, how come that's not clear? And so the same principle is true. Whenever you send out an email, it should be one product in one email with one call to action, not 19 products with 19 calls to action. One product, one call to action. Same thing with the landing page. One product, one page, one call to action. I think you set up your salespeople to be more successful that way, to where they don't have this scatterbrained, I have 19 things to try to sell to this person. No, they called for one reason. So let's follow up on that one reason. Now, once we're in that call, we might find that they need a different product, or they need a couple of our products. But let's make it really clear with our call to action that when they landed on this page or they got this email, this is the action we want them to take and nothing else. We don't want them to click a button and to read an article. We don't want them to, listen to a podcast and click a button. We don't want them to call a number and fill out a form and take a survey. No, just one thing. What's the one thing you're asking me to do? Then the chances of your person that you're reaching out to making that one decision is much, much, much higher than if you give them several options.
Interesting. I've got one more question for you on this one, Mark, because the follow-up falls for the most part on the shoulders of the salesperson. But looking at it from, let's just say, lead nurturing versus the salesperson just continuing to keep that lead and really following up with it, is there any particular metric that you care about that sales often ignores? Do you see anything like that really helps you from a determined engagement standpoint, or making sure that you've got that ideal persona? Or is there anything like that I might literally not know that you need to, the particular statistics or whatnot that you might need to have that I'm just simply not providing?
Yeah, let me tell you two right off the top of my head.
Okay.
And one has to do with email, one has to do with websites, okay, or landing pages, either one. So the first one is open rates. I think open rates, also along with unsubscribe rates. But let's just talk about open rates first and foremost. I don't expect most people to open an email. For the most part, I expect people to see me, or for any of the companies you're working for them to see that company in their email list of things. And every time they see it, even if they don't open it, it's making an impression on them that they're getting reached out to. Right. If I start seeing that open rate drop under 10%, I'm doing something wrong. And what that usually tells me is I have a subject line that's wrong. I have content that's wrong. I'm sending out an email too often. Sometimes not often enough. They've forgotten who I am between emails. I got this one company, they probably reach out to me 3 times a year on email. And I'm like, I have to remind myself, oh yeah, that's that one company I went to 9 years ago. And who are you? So the open rate is something I want to look at. I also would look at the unsubscribe rate. If I get a huge unsubscribe rate, that means that I'm coming across too spammy. Right. I want to see the click-through rate on emails. I want to see that there's at least some people that click the button, because what that tells me is that the call to action to click the button is at least clear. If I get 0 clicks, that makes me concerned that maybe I put the call to action in an ambiguous way.
Mhm.
The other thing is websites. I want to see, they call it I think they call it right up. They might have a better term, but it's basically a bounce rate on websites. If somebody goes to a website and immediately clicks off, something like Microsoft Clarity would tell you if people are doing that. That's why I would highly recommend using something. It doesn't have to be Microsoft Clarity. There's lots of these things out there. That one just happens to be free. And what it'll do is it'll record a number of the sessions of people, being on your website. And if you see this rate where people are getting to your website when in under 10 seconds they're jumping off like right away, that means that nothing is grabbing their attention. That requires somebody like a conversion rate optimization specialist to look at your website and say, yeah, there's nothing here that's getting anybody's attention. It needs to be reworked. But if somebody stays on your website for a minute before they click off, that's golden. That means they spent a lot of time on your website. And if they're spending several minutes, you're really onto something.
Well, and it's interesting that you're even specifying that from a lead perspective of where it's just from like lead nurturing, something maybe that sales has already spoken with, because I would have thought that would solely been on the front end and then really would not have mattered beyond that. But you're really still tracking all of those metrics because you're trying to catch engagement. You're trying to see of like who those leads that have that possibility convert. That's just interesting to me. Okay.
Well, Microsoft Clarity and others like it
Yeah.
will record a session. They'll show you exactly where their cursor goes, so you can watch their cursor go around the page. It'll show you how far they scroll down. Do they ever get past that opening plane? Above the fold, the hero section, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
Do they ever get past that, or do they see that and that makes them curious to go down? Where do they stop the scroll? Where are they reading? You can watch all of that through something like Microsoft Clarity, and it's just a really helpful tool to see if the messaging is right. One thing I've learned from other agency owners is that as much as I want the design to be the thing that sells websites, because I am a designer at the end of the day,
Yeah.
ultimately it's the messaging that sells websites before the design. And so, I mean, case in point, if you had cancer
Yeah.
and you went to a website and one said, I have the cure for cancer, and the other one looks like, like a beautiful art project, you would click on the one that says, I have a cure for cancer, right? You're gonna click on the one that actually addresses the thing that, even if it's super ugly, it looks like Craigslist, if it has the answers on it, people will spend some time there if it's addressing a pain point. But the other is true as well, that they won't just stay on something because it's pretty, even though I want them to. But let me ask you this, John. I mean, so these things get into the sales pipeline, and sales guys sometimes are really good at follow-up. Sometimes they're really not. So what are some of the biggest lies that salespeople tell themselves when it comes to follow-up? I mean, like, well, hey, if they really want this product, they'll get it. They'll call me if they really want it.
You hit the nail on the head, I would say, right off of the first one. I mean, it's interesting on how, salespeople make their living off of closing deals. For the most part, we all have, a variable that is our income, and closing deals is where we're able to really start making those commission checks. Some of these commission checks can absolutely be monstrous. But I think oftentimes, and it's not, I wouldn't even say it's like laziness or anything of that nature. It's if they're really interested, they'll reach out to me. I've already emailed them. I text them. You'll see this on LinkedIn pretty often, of where you've got the manager that is like, give them a call, and they'll be like, well, I emailed them. Just give them a call. Well, I text them. Oh, I sent them a message on LinkedIn, and at the end of it, the sales manager's just like, my God, just give them a call. And they say, I sent a second email. It's really, I think you don't want to be a squeaky wheel in regards to like being annoying, but I think if you could establish your follow-ups to where they're beneficial, that you can kind of anticipate and so on, you really have just got to be able to continuously provide benefits, but you're also got to continuously be making sure that, they're not waiting for you, that you're the one that's keeping top of mind and so on, so that these deals have a higher probability of closing.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to that thing I cited earlier today about this predatory lending company that was like, following up with people 9 times a day, plus stalking them on social media and just
Mhm.
bombarding them. And we would say that's probably a little bit over the top. However, talk to me about the philosophy about the right way to do that. I mean, how do you keep top of mind? How do you keep memorable? How do you how much persistence is enough and how much is not enough?
I'm going to break this down a couple different ways, at least in my philosophy when it comes to follow-ups. I always looked at my accounts every week. Or, sorry, not every week. I looked at my accounts every single day. I wanted to have my account executives looking at their leads, every day, every other day, and so on, because I think the first part of the follow-up is that you need to know that you need that you need to follow up with them. You don't ever want to have it where these leads fall off and they're not something that you're tracking or something that you're paying attention to. If you're not doing that, why would you expect your prospect to remember to reach out to you either? So I always looked at it where even if you're not reaching out on a daily basis and every other day or anything like that, even if it's just once a week, I wanted to make sure that I was aware of where each one of these leads were, where they are in the process. Have they looked at the quote that I sent out? Is there further questions? Am I expecting them to have internal dialogues and so on? Once that part is kind of set aside, I would also build out anticipated follow-ups as a part of this sales conversation. If you and I were discussing a service and you needed to talk internally with this, let's just say that you were talking to your boss or something. If I couldn't have gotten them on the call, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make sure that you are as prepped and as feasibly possible for you to be able to answer those questions that your boss might be asking. But then the next thing I would be is like, okay, Mark, when are you going to have that conversation? Is it something you got on the calendar? Is it something, yeah, let's say that you would anticipate meeting with them Thursday. What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow up with you Thursday morning. Let's let this have a couple days to percolate. Let's make sure that you've got, all the questions that you need answered. And then I will reach out to you on Thursday just to make sure that there's no pressing matter or anything. If I can help on that call, please let me. If I knew that it was going to be Thursday morning at 10, for example, I would probably follow up either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, and it would be just another check. How did you feel? Did you feel prepped with that conversation? Did your boss have any questions that you and I had not originally covered? Is there anything that we need to go over? And what it allowed is, instead of me just having the follow-up of, just following up and it like being
Yeah, right.
the message of that, I've got specifics as of the reason why, which is going to allow for more engagements. I'm going to be able to keep top of mind. I'm also going to be able to show that boss that I'm really trying to make sure that they are educated in the system, that they feel empowered with it, that they know who to go to if they need additional assistance, and hopefully will help them feel more comfortable about going with the product or service that I'm offering. Because if they can see it from a sales end, they should also expect it from a customer success and so
Mm.
on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know my process when, I'm not a sales guy. I'm a marketing guy, but, I have to dabble in sales because I think that every business owner has to do some level of sales. I know when I meet somebody who I think could be a prospect,
Mhm.
I grab physical cards still. I scan them into my phone, into Go High Level. And as soon as I scan them in, it automatically opts them into a process where it starts following up with them. And then I'll usually, if I think it was a good, possibility for me, I'll jump on the socials, usually whatever social they traffic on the most, and I'll follow them on
Mhm.
socials. So I know there's email going out to them. I know there's socials going out to them. And then if I watch them open an email, then that's the time I'm like, all right, it's probably time for me either to follow up with an email or with a phone call. That's a
Right.
little bit more personal, and that's kind of my process. I'm not an expert at this. Tell me what your process looks like. What's your default follow up cadence when you get a lead in the door?
Well, I'll say it this way. My follow-up cadence is going to be is I need to follow exactly whatever I say that I'm going to do. If you and I met at a networking meeting or something like that, we passed cards and I said that I was going to follow up with you tomorrow, I need to make sure that I'm following up with you tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
it's I don't want to ever have it of where flaky is a kind of a poor word for it, but I don't want to ever have it of where I'm going to say one thing and then I'm not following up on my word.
That's right.
The next thing in regards to a cadence perspective, it needs to be able to kind of match whatever the particular product or service that you are providing. Have that initial meeting as soon as you can. If it's one of those of where you heard a general time frame from that prospect that you initially had a handshake with,
Right.
you need to follow up in accordance to that period.
That's
If
right.
it's one of those of where they know that they're going to be looking in January, you probably need to be reaching out in June, or you need to be reaching out in November so that you can kind of start having those initial conversations. You also need to determine and kind of know of what the typical buying journey is going to be. What's the process of usually that you see for approval? I would say that those are going to be the major indicators that are regarding the follow-up cadence as a whole, but at least have that first conversation as soon as you can, and be true to your word of when you say that you're going to follow up at this period of time, that's what you do.
So there's the kind of classic 4 U's of sales.
Mhm.
That something is useful, it is unique, it's ultra specific,
Mhm.
and it's urgent. And
Yeah.
so those are the four U's, right? How do you create some urgency without creating fake pressure on somebody?
I do not like creating fake urgency in the slightest. It's one of those of where I don't think, let me switch it this way. I hate to be sold to. I love to buy. And if it's one of those of where I know that there is a particular need that I have to be able to accommodate, if there's something I've got to be able to solve, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for the person that is wanting to help educate me so that I understand that particular vertical, that particular market, that particular product, service, whatever it is. I want to have it of where they are interested in making sure that I make a good decision versus simply just slinging a product and that ends up being that something that doesn't fit for what I'm trying to accomplish or trying to do.
Yeah, there's nothing that loses trust more than a salesperson forcing a product on you that you really don't need.
Completely.
Yeah.
You want the fastest way to lose a deal with me is say that, it's only discounted for the next 24 hours. I don't know if it's my spiteful nature to be like, I will call you in 25 and we will see what it is.
Oh, I had somebody pull that on me the other day. Yeah, they told me that if I didn't buy their product, it was going to go $1,000 up on the next call. And I literally said to them, John, I said, do you own the company? Well, yeah. So you can make that decision of what the price point is. Well, yeah. Well, all right. Before I make a decision, I'm going to go run this by the decision makers at my company. And if you want my business, you'll keep the price exactly where it is. And if you really pull that tactic, I'm not going to buy. I mean, I literally just said this to him. I'm like, I have no patience for that. Buy now or it goes up $1,000. Well, forget that noise.
Yeah.
I see that coming a mile away.
I do not like that tactic. I would say that in most situations, that's where, salespeople really get like a bad name, is because they're really trying to push something. They're trying to make it urgent. They're trying to close it in a particular, time period that's going to be best apt for them, and it not be actually what's best for the prospect.
Yeah. And
yeah.
The other just feels like a used car salesman. Yeah, it's used cars techniques. Well, I got another person coming in and they're going to buy it out from underneath you and you better buy it now. And then they have their wife call. Oh, the kids are sick today. And oh, well, I need some more money for medicine. So, you guys are really going to help me out. And I got to talk to my sales manager and it's going to take an hour, I talked him down. Come on.
I think the only real time of where you can push that kind of urgency is if it actually is truly urgent.
If it's actually true.
If it's one of those of where there's only a set number and as soon as they're gone forever or a period of time or whatever it is, you need to be able to make sure that they are aware there's nothing I can do here. This is your time frame or whatever the particular, wall that you're up against. You need to make the decision or not.
Yeah.
I think it can happen also from corporations. Let's just say that if you didn't have any structure in regarding like how price is going to change or whatnot, because I've been in that case a couple of times of where, you've got a fairly lengthy sales cycle. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at, moving forward in a couple months, but then prices are getting ready to change. And you could say, Mark, I literally have no control for this. I hopefully will have discounts that I can help with X, Y, and Z, but it's not going to be what it is today. You've got 4 days. Please let me know. If it doesn't make sense now, I'll do whatever I can for you, in that period of time that we originally were talking about. But all I've done is I've kept the position of a trusted advisor versus a salesperson that is simply just trying to be, sleazy and try to get something, past you and just trying to get my paycheck.
Yeah, well, one of the most successful campaigns I ever saw, I was working in broadcasting, and there literally was this thing they called a one-day sale.
Yeah.
And it was actually legit. Internally, we could sell the spots for half price on one day. And so all the salespeople would line up people weeks ahead of time for the one-day sale, and they just call them all day. Like, okay, you want your half price spots, half price spots, half price spots. Yeah, all day long from this one-day sale. And it worked. It really was a half price discount for one day.
Right.
And so, I mean, it wasn't a fake urgency. That was just what the manager had given us to do. So, so I appreciate that. Well, hey,
Right.
John, we're probably about time to wrap up this thing.
Well, I was thinking the same thing.
What are your final thoughts here, man?
Well, with where this topic is, follow-up is definitely something that, everybody needs to continue to strengthen. You need to be able to make sure that you're following your word. You need to make it so that you're never leaving it up to your prospect for them to be the one that reaches out to you, and you need to be following up and reaching up to them. In regards to the rest of where this was going from like an urgency and actually building out the sales process in this one, Mark, we've got 2 more episodes. I think this is where we should really be focusing so the listenership can really kind of benefit from that, because I think there's a lot that you can get from there. But at that point, let's do this. Let's close this one out and we'll dive into those next ones next week. So this is going to be Mark Close 1. This is in regards to marketing that makes real money, specifically in regards to the follow-up here. You all have a wonderful one. Take care.
See you guys later.